So the first thing I want to do now, I want to kind of set up a better kind of experiment. I want to put my camera further into the space. So I'm going to turn on my cameras. Remember, they're on the OpenGL view. I'm going to take this camera right here, the one we just had, and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to copy it by transform, using the transform tool, but then apply to copy right here. Okay, so now if I move it, it's actually a copy of it. And I want it to look straight onto the facade. I think that's a more kind of analytical view. It's easier to read the contour. So I double clicked on it so I could get the grab bars, and I made it so that we could look straight at the wall. I'm going to also move it into the center, so which is here. Oop, now I made another copy, which I didn't want to. Delete this one. Unclick this, apply to copy. Let's check how this looks. Okay, that gives us a lot more ceiling space now. Now, one thing I'm going to do, also I'm going to change this to a wide angle camera by going to the material, having this camera selected and hitting wide angle. You see how this actually, the cone of vision changed of the camera. So that sounds good here. And now I'm going to, okay, now I'm really far back. And remember, Radiance is going to cut something off. So this is actually fine. Let's actually render this. And before we do that, let's actually start our experiment. The first rendering is going to be no light shelves. So we're going to turn them both off. Okay, and we're going to have, winter is fine. Let's keep winter. December 21st. Calculate, lighting analysis, export to Radiance. I don't really have to change anything here. I'm going to let it run. Don't forget to press render. Should be almost done. I should probably make those files a little smaller. It doesn't take that long. Oh, that was the wrong one. You know what we did? We actually let's do this again. Lighting analysis, export to Radiance, select camera views, just the wide angle camera. And I guess we should just make this smaller. No, it's okay. You just have to wait. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually do this 3 times without any light shelves, with an exterior light shelf, with an interior light shelf. And we're going to render it the same way. With a false color image with the same scale. That is very, very important, that every time you're using the same scale, so you're comparing apples to apples. And then we can actually overlay them in Photoshop, and we can see if we start to recognize any behavior in terms of light distribution. Okay. We're going to have to take care of that yellow. That looks really awful. So, but first of all, we're going to do a false color image. Remember, we had 2000 as a scale, and we're just gonna put that there. Okay, great. So you can see there's a lot of light in the red, over 2000, way over 2000. There's some reddish on the ceiling here, and a lot of it on the sides, and then you can see how how the red becomes green into the like around 1900, and then it fades into kind of the light blue and then the darker blue. So this is the light that comes off these surfaces. So this is the actual you know, experience and the actual light distribution in this space. I'm going to copy to clipboard, paste into Photoshop, and I'm going to call this layer, before I forget it, no shelf winter. Now I'm going back. I'm going to turn on my exterior light shelf, and I'm going to do the same thing again. That's okay. That's okay. Hit render. And here is the image. Okay, so now you can see the light shelf in here. Again, we're going to do a false color. We're going to do 2000. And as you're watching this tutorial, you should think about what are meaningful options that you will compare in your model. You know, I would love to see some horizontal louvers on the different spacing on the outside, for example, and see the effect for daylighting on the inside that this has. Okay, so put this into, so now we can already see, we're going to call this exterior shelf winter. So now if we actually just in Photoshop turn layers on and off and see if we can make sense of what's happening. So what's going on here? This is the exterior light shelf. So there is a reduction in light, and you can try to understand, okay, where's the reduction? Is it on the floor? Is it on the sidewalls? Is it on the ceiling? What's actually happening? There's definitely an overall reduction. It seems most prevalent on the ceiling. And if you think about the ceiling, how does the ceiling get lit here? It's actually an indirect reflection of the sunlight that's on the floor, and there's a lot less in the center area, so that's why it's actually darker here. Darker doesn't necessarily mean worse, because this excessive amount of light also creates glare issues in this area. But let's finish this exercise, this experiment, by turning the exterior light shelf off and the interior light shelf on, and doing this one more time. Lighting analysis, export to Radiance. Okay, yes, render. And the last thing we're going to do is experiment with materiality. Just one design for the facade, for the light shelves, and then just seeing what the effect of different materials is. And this is you have to decide what is your experiment, what is a meaningful experiment for your specific design. Okay, false color, 2000. You know, it doesn't have to be 2000. It really depends on your design. It just has to be the same every time you do this experiment. This scale is really about what do you actually want to show. I mean, for example, I could see what happens if I do, 4000. There will be more definition at the very bright areas now. All right, so now you can see a variation happening within the windows at the mullions, but we don't really care about that at the moment. We really care. So you see there's less, now there's less information about how the light comes into the space. So that's why I'm going to, for me, 2000 seemed the right scale. All right, let's get this into Photoshop and see what happens. Okay, we're going to call this interior shelf winter. Now, if I actually, this is the interior shelf. This is the exterior shelf. And what I see here, what is quite interesting, is what happens on the ceiling. With an exterior light shelf, what we're seeing right now, there's, you know, quite a bit less illumination on the ceiling than with an interior light shelf. All right, so you can really see how the green boundary is moving further into the space when you have the interior right now, and it's moving outwards with the exterior light shelf. So that means that there's actually light being reflected off the interior light shelf that hits the ceiling in a more effective way than the outside. A lot of the outside is actually reflected up against the top window portion, that top portion of the wall that's not a window. So that's kind of a fault of this design. I mean, it would be better if this window was actually all the way to the ceiling, and then maybe an exterior light shelf could still be valuable. And let's not forget that the exterior light shelves, the benefit is actually also that it shades a large portion, which these images are not so much about. Was the previous things that the previous diagrams we did. But so that's kind of interesting. Now we can compare no shelf and interior shelf. So there is a reduction in light, right? It definitely is more light coming in when you have no obstruction, which is kind of obvious to a certain extent. And the question now is can the geometry of this interior light shelf be optimized, or can the materiality be optimized to throw more light into the back? Okay, so you can now these are in Photoshop, you can make JPEGs out of them, and you can put those into a presentation.